Okay, in this video, I'm going to show how to install the thumb throttle onto a DK2. So I'm going to go ahead and put the thumb throttle on, move the display over a little and put on the thumb throttle, and then thread the cable of the thumb throttle through these O-rings, and I'll push the O-rings up out of the way, and then I'm going to pull this grommet out, and we want to be careful that it doesn't get pushed in. So then that grommet will come out. To one way to aid to make that a little easier to pull that grommet, and we should do this anyway while we're threading the throttle in, is to loosen the shift lever, your shift levers and your brake lever, and slide them all the way over. This way we're not getting all these cables like pulling away. So now I have good access to that hole there. This is one method of doing it when we're trying to get it through the actual stem like it would have been stock. So I'm going to now try to get this threaded down, and one way to do that is I'm going to use a wire. So I've got a wire that's like 1.5 feet long, and I'm going to bend one end of this wire around to create like a hook, and then I've got a string, and I'm going to stick this through my string. So I've got my string hooked on here. The one thing we want to try to avoid doing is poking or cutting or pulling any of the wires that are already in there, or so I don't want any sharp edges that are going to be feeding through there. So I'm also going to let's see if I can pull this out just a little. There we go. I'm going to take some electrical tape. And of course, there's lots of different ways that this can be done. This is just the way that I chose to do it, and we'll see if I have success doing it. So all I've done is created like this needle and thread, and then I don't want this really sharp end either. So I'm going to bend the very end around just so that my needle is now blunt. Okay, then I'm going to thread this down through this hole, and then we'll end up hooking the string on there. There is a ledge inside here where the stem bolt goes down and hooks into the star ring. So I'm put a slight bend on my wire, and then I'm just going to thread this down, and I've hit that ledge. I can feel. There we go. So I've come all the way down. Let's see, are we in the frame here? So that I've come out, and I'm just going to pull that through till I have my string there. So now I have a string that I can use to pull this wire down, and all I'm going to do is put and it's more of like a rope, I guess, than a string, but I'm going to try to do this so that there's not like a hook that this creates. If I just did this and it went through, it would end up hooking on everything. So I'm going to wrap this tape around and try to create as smooth of a transition as I possibly can here. And then when that's ready to go, I'll leave a little flag so that I can unwrap it, because I hate trying to get those unwrapped. And now I can try to pull that down. Now I just made a big mistake, and I'm gonna have to actually start over here. I forgot to go through my grommet. So I gotta make sure that I get, is that in the, yeah, that I get through this grommet and then down through the stem, Let's see if I can do this again. There we go. It's the worst if you go all the way and then realize you forgot to do that. So now we're in, and I'm just gonna thread it through, and I'm going to kind of wiggle my wires, and I might have to come back in and go down again. It feels like it's hung up on something. So it's either hitting the wires or it's caught an edge. I'm not able to get through there. Let's try it again. There we go. And so I've pulled that all the way through, and I can take off that tape. Like I said, sometimes I'll have to pull it out and push it back in again. Don't know exactly how all the wires are twisted or pushed or pulled inside that stem. But if you take your time, and you need to be careful that you're not pulling too hard or that you're not pinching any of these wires or anything. So just taking that tape off. And so now that I've got my wire through, there's a whole bunch of more O-rings that this needs to get threaded through. So I thread those through all these O-rings. And this, if yours doesn't look exactly like this, there may be some plastic housing wrapped around all these wires on your bike. Just however it is, just we're gonna match it how it was. And then I gotta pull this grommet also. And again, being careful not to lose the grommet. Gotten some I've got oil on my fingers. It's hard to do. There we go. So now I've pulled that grommet. I'm going to pull these wires out. These are the wires for your display and for your brake sensor, and there's the plug that I was looking for that is for your throttle. And that throttle may be pushed down a little bit, so you're going to have to, if that's the case, pull these out and then look inside there and see if you can't find that throttle wire. These wires eventually all hook together. They're all coming out of the same spot. And if you can't pull it all the way up to get your throttle wire, you may have to loosen the wires that are underneath the batteries to be able to pull that up a little. But you should be able to access that throttle wire just like I did. And then I'm going to make sure that I go through the grommet. And then I need to plug the throttle wire in. There's a little tooth. There's 3 pins that will line up exactly right. You got to make sure that everything lines up. There's a little arrow also on the outside that shows you how to line that up. And these need to get pushed exactly together. Don't twist them at all, or else you'll bend those wires inside there. And then those snap in, and then I'm going to push all these wires back into the frame. And then put my grommet back in. It's kind of tricky because you got to squish that grommet and not have it pop into the frame itself. And there we go. I've got my throttle hooked up, and then to test it, turn on the display, and then of course should just work. So yep, I've got a throttle. So then I put my fender back on, I would put the wheel back on, and we should be set.